This time of year it's a little sad in the garden, but it's October the 15th today, and many places have already had frosts. But as you can see here in La Have, those nasturtiums are very happy, and so things are not quite as bleak as they seem. In the forecast, there's no frost for us for another week. That's as far as they look ahead. And the daisies are starting to die off a little bit now, but they've been flowering for 3 weeks at this point. So that's pretty good for this time of the year. As I call it, my daisy wave. That's a 40-foot daisy wave. And that's Riverport across the river. Back to Pottery. Morning or evening or afternoon. It's Vaughan at westcoatbellpottery.ca in Nova Scotia, Canada. A lot of comments in my YouTube videos recently have been asking about things like cracks, centering, how thin the wall should be when you cut a piece in half after you've centered it. So there's been a lot of stuff that I've tried to answer in comments, but I thought I may as well just do a video again, and then I'll link to the previous videos where I've talked about centering and all that kind of stuff. But and I've got some other stuff, I guess a kiln unloading to do as well in this video. But so I'm pretty much over COVID. I occasionally cough, but that's about it at the moment. So that was 3.5 weeks ago that I caught it. So great, got through it again. This is thick enough so that it does tend to splash a bit over the top, as you can see on my wall here. And that's the first thing I want to talk about. But I like to be, have this wheel head a little bit higher for me. I have, and I've shown it in other videos, this wall, so that when I put my elbow against this wall like that, it's right at the central part of the bat that I'm throwing on, and I can tilt my wheel a couple of inches this way or take it back depending on what I'm throwing. But this wall gives me the ability to not have to press that hard with my left hand. I just wedge it in place, and it doesn't move my arm. And now I can still move backwards and forwards like that, obviously, but this stops me from being pushed by the clay. And so if you have the ability to put your wheel next to a wall, I suggest you do so, because it will help you in centering. And then there's the height. The wheel should be such that you can get your body, and your head especially, and your hands, leaning on the splash pan. Let's get you tilted down a bit more. Leaning on the splash pan with your arms, and also you can sometimes put a brick on the floor where your knee is that will lift your knee up a little bit. What I mean by a brick is a brick. So when I put that down here, it means that my knee is now level with the splash pan. So when I'm leaning on my knee instead of the splash pan. Reason for that is I had some sort of medical thing done where they were testing my nerves in my arms and hands when I had carpal tunnel syndrome, and they told me I had damage in this area of my arm. Obviously that's from the splash pan. So prevent rather than suffer. So if you can put a brick underneath there, that'll help prevent that. On this side, I've got the foot pedal, so that does that job there. So, all right. So those things, it's about getting your body pulled up. My chair is pulled right up to the wheel, and my knees are level with the splash pan, and my foot is on the foot pedal, very sensitively pressing forward or slow down, whatever, and get good light so you can see what you're doing and all that. All right, so what have we got? I have from Pottery Supply House some clay, which it's new, it hasn't been used before, and it's in little blocks like this. Well, I don't suggest you do that as a starter. You need to round it off. So that when you put this down, it's going to be less work to center it because it's already round. Okay, another thing that you should do and try is, what does it take to center a ball of clay? Well, this is how much pressure I put on with my side hand. 30 pounds I can press down there. It's a funny angle to do it too, pushing down. But that's how much pressure. And on my right hand, maybe a little bit more than 30 pounds. So get a scale and just try pushing it down to 30 pounds. See how much pressure that is. And that'll give you an idea of how much pressure it takes with those two hands to center a ball of clay. And that all depends on how soft your clay is too. Some clay may be softer and some may be stiffer. But that's how much pressure I tell people who are learning how to throw that they should be able to apply. And so obviously, if you aren't able to apply that much pressure, you need to be throwing a little bit softer clay so that you can center it easier. All right, so you clean your wheel head off with a sponge that isn't got much. See, I'm squeezing hard and just a few drips come out. And then you do that on your wheel head so that your wheel head is moist but not wet. And then you put down a ball of clay, and you can place it and then bang it, or you can throw it down, whichever you feel it. But as a beginner, to get it in the center, it's a good idea just to put it down and pat it so that you don't get it off center, and because that would be a disadvantage straight away. And then test your arm. See how far away I am? So I got to pull this wheel a little bit closer to the wall here. So my elbow is now jammed and I'm touching the clay. All right, so that will make it easier for centering. All right, so let's do it, and then I'll knock it off center again. Put water on it. Oh, there goes my sponge. Put water on it. Make sure there's no dry clay on your hands, because you don't want to do that. And then first thing is you push down with your top hand, just to put some pressure on to make sure the pot is stuck to the wheel, the lump of clay. And then you bring in your side hand, and you just put pressure on with both hands just to kind of really seal it to the wheel head. Now, how do I do that to make it go in center? Well, the first thing I do is apply top pressure and then side pressure a fraction later. So that's important to know. And it's important not to pull this little finger underneath the clay, because that'll give you a mushroom shape, and that's not good, because you almost lift the clay off the wheel when you start doing that. But the first thing, both hands, I'm pressing with this part of my hand, I'm pressing with that part of my hand, is to kind of push it up into a bit of a cone. Like that. And then take both hands either side and make an ice cream cone. And don't stay on the clay in one place, because you'll dry it out and it'll pull it off the wheel. So plenty of water. See, lots of water. And then push it back down again. Hand on the side is doing that, and the top hand is right on the point of the top. And then you push down, and this part of the hand is pressing right on the top to stop it mushrooming. And then as soon as I can, this finger will be touching the back to stop the clay from spreading out. So you go down, dries very quickly, and it's in center. All right, so let's do it again. You got a ball of clay that's off center. If I do this with this hand, because it's wedged into there, it pretty much goes in center anyway, because this is stopping my elbow from being pulled over. Let's pull it a bit closer again. It's still not quite close enough. See, so go off center, wedge your elbow into the wall, and just put your hand against it, and it actually stops it from wobbling or just on its own. Now, because I'm not doing the top thing, the bat itself was wobbling a bit there. But just off center, put your hand in, so your elbow can't be knocked, and it'll go into center. So it's because if you let your hand go backwards and forwards, you won't be in center that way. So you've got to have pressure pulling in like that, but your arm can't be pushed. Your arm cannot be pushed any further out because it's locked in. So you've got an off-center piece, wet it, and just put your hand against it like that. Goes into center. And that's the principle of a Jigger and Jolly machine, which you can search on Google if you want to see what they look like. But anyway, so we got it, we coned it, and we pulled it down, elbow locked into the wood, and then on my pressure, this hand is right there. So look at the clay on my hand. That's the bit that's in contact with the wheel.
the clay rather there, and my hand is right on the wheel head. That's why it's worn out on this bat here, because my skin has been erasing that laminate that's on the surface of this piece of wood over the years. Okay, so and then you just pull this in. It goes into center sideways, but you might have a wobble on the top. So you bring your hand in and you just take it down till it's flat, and then you lift off slowly. And look where the clay is on this hand. That's it. This isn't touching the clay. It goes like that, and this bit is on the top of the clay itself. But that's mostly what's touching the clay on my right hand, and this is what touches the clay on my left hand. So we have a centered piece of clay. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, you've got to put a hole in. So wedge your elbow in into the wall again, and hopefully you can get a wall there. If not, you have to lean on the splash pad on your leg. Just make a dimple. Before it dries out, let go slowly. Put some water in there again. And don't go any further down. If that dimple is wobbling sideways now because it wasn't in the center, you shouldn't have pressed anyway. But if you did, and it's off center, don't go any further. You're just going to get an off center pot. So then put your hand back on here, push in with your left hand, and push down with your top hand like that, and you're simply going to flatten it again. So you've gone back to that square. But it wasn't worth pushing a hole in if it wasn't on center. You're going to be working a lot on a piece of clay that it'll be so much harder to do anything with. So that you should practice and make sure you can get it every time. Alright, then you're going to look for that little dimple in the center. Feel for it. I tried it, it's the flat of this finger that's pressing there, but this point there is the bit that's going right on the center. So I'm feeling for the center with the very edge of my finger, and then the flat of my finger is pressing down to kind of open the hole up a little bit. Keep it wet. Press down. And leave about a centimeter if you're learning, so that you don't get it too thin, because we're going to talk about cracks in a minute. Okay, so hand wet. Now this finger's going to go in there because it's wide enough now, but that's the finger that's pressing to open it up. So this finger's going to press, this finger's going to be helping it with a bit of weight against that finger so that it's a bigger shape of my hand to push with. So we've gone down deep enough, and then you pull, put your elbow against that wall again and pull to open it up, knowing that you've got about a centimeter at the bottom. And before it dries out, you let go slowly. And this is the bit in a comment I just had last night, actually. Robin Hopper taught me at a workshop to put your finger right at the edge of the wall and pull back to the center like this. And don't snap any clay off. Just pull back and put pressure back on. Because S-cracks that are in the bottom of the piece are because of lack of compression. And that's where that 35 pounds of pressure that I was doing from the side and from the top was compressing the clay enough so that when I opened it up, it wasn't going to be lack of compression causing cracks there. The clay had been really made dense by the weight of my hands pushing against it. But in an insurance policy is, and this can be done so fast, you push down at the wall edge, the corner, and you pull back in to the center, and you don't snap any clay off. That little bit that you build up in the center there, you push back into the center, and that gives you that extra compression to stop these cracks. That's one reason for getting cracks in the clay. So what do we do when we've got a flat base and a bit of a wall? Like it's a bowl at the moment. So dribble some water over the edge so it goes in and out. If I do this, gently apply pressure without any help from my left hand, we can make it get almost closed up if you want to, just by applying that pressure. Don't stay on the same level. It has to chase the wet spot all the way up, otherwise you have to let go before it dries out. So that's not what we want to do, because otherwise we just made ourselves an inkwell. Oh, nobody uses inkwells anymore either. But okay, so we dribble water inside and out. If you put your fingers on the inside and do this opposite of what I did before, you're just stretching it, you're making a wall, but it doesn't get any taller. But you open it up so you got a bowl again, like a small cylinder. those are the two pressures that we've got to coordinate to make it do something. So you dribble the water down, and I'm going to put these two fingers right at the base, and I wear away my fingernail here. I can't really show you that much of it, I suppose. See if I can. No, you can't see it too much because I cut my fingernails the other day. But I always wear away the fingernail there because it's back of it is touching the bat when I start this pull. So you got to be careful because I literally have made myself bleed sometimes doing that. But these fingers are then going to form like a 45 degrees. Like if I can get this in the that finger's touching. This finger's touching the bat. And the top finger is tilted over, so you've got a 45 degree that you're going to apply to the clay and make the clay fly over this finger, over that finger, and then go up. The fingers on the inside are going to do exactly the same. So we're pressing together, and the clay moves, it squishes, and moves to go up higher because of the angle of your fingers. What hits one, and then the other, and ends up higher. So watch what I mean. Two fingers, inside and outside, push together, and then start bringing your fingers up. And I just doubled the height, at least, of this ball of clay. Now, every time I pull, I put my finger right on the top edge and compress it. Give me a sponge here. Now, at the end of every pull, if you're a beginner, it should stay narrower because you apply more pressure with the outside fingers than you do with the inside fingers. But if you made it get wider, you've got to do what's called collaring and simply put your hands completely around the piece and make it narrow again at the top. All right. So we've got that. Same again. Now I can't get my fingers like this on the inside very easily, so I'm using the flat of my finger, but I'm trying to position them so it hits this finger, then that finger, and goes up higher, and the same on the outside. And I'm a bit too high on that pull there, but I'm touching at the bottom. More pressure on the outside fingers so it doesn't get wider. My right hand is anchored to my thigh. This hand is leaning on my thigh. This hand is up in the air because it's no longer able to go down on the actual edge of the wheel. But that's the second pull. And then at this point, it's only a small piece of clay. I put a little edge at the bottom using the pin, the pointed end of that tool. I turn it around. I've talked about this in other videos where I modified this rib so it's not original shape that it was sold to me as. So it's got less of a curve here. The right angle has been cut off, and so it's less of a strong right angle. It's more of a curve. And then I push it in, and that gives me that edge. And then I take a metal rib. I'm thinking I should change my metal rib because this one's been bented by so much over. And get your hand wet before you put it in. And then I push with my inner finger against the metal rib so I can belly it. But the metal rib is anchored in my hand by my arm resting on my thigh. And then it's dragging to get the water off. I lift it up just to skip it a little bit. Give me that double lip. So basically, you're just shaping with the rib. But that's my mug. That's my studio mug. Every studio should strive to create themselves a shape or a form of a mug that is recognizable as your studio mug. And there's so many. You can play around with that for a lifetime. But anyway, this is the most common mug that I make. It's a modification of a ship's mug. It doesn't have as wide a base as a ship's mug, and it's a bit wider at the top than a ship's mug. But it's a very stable form of mug. There you go, and then you take those sponge down. Potters are not supposed to drag a sponge over the rim, but this clay has literally no grit in it, so I don't worry about that. Just a shortcut to keep the sponge rather than using a leather. And then I just pull it down. So that is a basic mug. Dribble some water around. Lots of ways of taking clay off the wheel, but I just let it spin very slowly, pull the wire through, and it will release with the wire. And then you just take it to the edge. Don't let it sit there for very long because it will rejoin. And that's the shape of mug. So, in real time, let's do that. You can replay this part of the video. But in real time, this is how I make a mug. I don't bat it into a circle, into a ball. I simply roll around on the one side to give myself a curve, bang it down. I am strong enough, having shown you what I can press on 35 pounds of pressure. Elbow against the wall. Moving it around a little bit, just to kind of up, down, to get it into center. It's drying, so you have to get some more lubrication here. And then hole in the center, not too deep, 1 centimeter, widen it, pull your finger over while there's moisture at the bottom. You can pull that finger back in to the center point. That's to get rid of, that's to compress the bottom of the pot. And do that 2 or 3 times. Then dribble water both sides. More pressure with the outside finger. This bat just wobbled on the pins. It's an old bat, but I love it. Same again. Now that's why I don't take it high, too high, so my middle finger can touch the bottom again when it goes in. On that last one, I was a bit too high. But anyway, you do that. And time it so that you are chasing the wet spot. See how narrow I got it? Finger on the rim edge. Dribble some water right on the edge so it's in and out. And then I put the foot in. So that's set now, so we'll barely trim it. And then you put your hand in with lots of water on it. Or push out with your middle finger right at the bottom. I'm pulling my thumb on the rim on the outside at the top, so it keeps the piece a little narrower. Lift the rib up and give yourself the double rim. And then afterwards you just take the rib, glide it over the surface to get rid of any extra moisture. Real time is important because I can throw so fast that I don't get problems with the clay getting too soft. If you throw slow, the clay will get soft while you're throwing. And then just get a nice clean. That sponge I was just using is so worn out, I've got to change it. And that's it. So we took the water out. These mugs take about 2 minutes to throw. And take it off. And then pull it onto your hands so it's flat. And that's the same shape type of mug I just did. Alright, so that's the gist of the throwing that I wanted to get over. It really just takes repetition. Keep doing it over and over and over again. I almost forgot to videotape this because there's some really nice carved pieces in here. So I just started unloading it and then thought, no, I gotta record this. But anyway, I've got some very intricately carved slip carvings, black and white slip over red clay. So I thought this would be worth looking at. So these are just using little sgraffito tools. And these are the 3 lids from some teapots coming out. And these are some little black and white carvings. They're not that great. I usually paint the sails white in these, but I was out of time, so I couldn't. When I was doing those, I was trying to go somewhere else. This is a commission.
somebody wanted one of my carved pieces with their farmhouse in it. So that's what that is, and they had 2 black dogs. So that's a little cushion that's going to get framed up basically. This is one of my usual landscape bowls. Yep, glaze is good on the outside. I did show painting these in a video recently. But there you go. You can tell I'm from Yorkshire, all the sheep. I like sheep, I mean they're just like little clouds on the landscape. Well, that's a nice bowl. I haven't done one of these for a while. I sent one to Australia recently. Well, not recently, because it would be, well, about a year ago, maybe less than a year. But I haven't had one in the gallery since then, so now I do. And here's one of my wife's small black and white carved mugs. Somebody just wanted me to send them pictures of a crow one. Too bad this is a seagull. Now, I hope these are all good. Yep, came off the stilt really easily. And this one has this lid. Does it fit? Fits perfectly. So this is one of my wife's carvings. Very intricately carving. There's a nice butterfly flying above the flowers. And there's the lid, another butterfly. And we always like these better when they're on the red clay roll. There's the stilt, and it just lifts right off like that. This is a commission. 2 teapots actually are commissions, and the tile piece all to the same person. That's the guy's farmhouse. And they have a fishing weir right outside the house, I guess. That's a little cottage. I guess it's a family cottage, and then this is the farmhouse. And there's their 2 dogs. Oh, it's just one in that one. Forgot to put the lid on. Is it that one? No, it could be either one. Just go with that one. There's the lid. And here is the coup de grace. That's the lid for this one. So this one, that's my usual seascapes that I do, and there's the fishing weir. And here is the cottage that they own. Right on the lake or on the ocean, I don't know which. Right. And there should be one more bowl. Okay, here is another one of the landscape bowls. This one doesn't have any brown trees in it, because the brown tree ones tend to look more fall, spring or winter. And without the brown trees, they have more of a summery look. And this, can't tell if you can see, there's that little apples painted in the trees. I don't think you can see it in the light because they're green apples. Oh, and there's the chattering on the bottom. I tried that chattering tool in these. That's the video I'm posting this Saturday night. And then we have a bunch of mugs. Gotta make sure the stilts don't fall off. There's another whale mug. I did a bunch of whale mugs. I think there's 5 or 6 of these. My wife has a more stylized approach. Oh, these are those stilts that I made as well from Freddie's tool. So that video was posted recently too. Cat in the garden. Actually, that's right, somebody wants a cat mug and a bird, a crow mug. So this one might be spoken for. Oh, maybe it's this one. Here's another one. 2 cats. And here is another whale mug. Yeah, I think there's 6 whale mugs altogether. I put 6 out in the gallery and sold all 6 of them within a week. These are 79 in Canadian dollars. One of my working principles is if I sell something, I make 2 of it. And then nothing's the same, but I make 2 of it next time. And if I sell both, then I'll make 4 the next time. And over the years, that has worked. It's a way evolution in your work, basically. And you don't always have to make just what sells. I mean, basically, you have to reward yourself too by making things you really want to make. But I like making things like this, so I actually enjoy just sitting there looking out the window, carving a mug like this. How can anything be better? Sitting looking over the ocean, carving a nice little mug. I don't know how good the light is doing this, but yeah, there's a huge cold area over central Canada that I assume will be coming this way eventually. But we still have flowers in the garden, and it's October 20th, I think, today. Too bad there's not a crow here, because that's what that order was for.